Welcome back to the Marvel Movie Minute, a daily podcast in which we explore the films of the Marvel Cinematic Universe 1 minute at a time. In this, our 5th season, we are looking at Joe Johnston's 2011 film, Captain America: The First Avenger. I'm Andy Nelson from the Next Reel Film Podcast.
I'm Pete Wright. Finally, Andy, finally, at the end of a long week, we get back to a little romance. Am I right?
Oh. That's right. Today we're talking about minute 30, which begins with Schmidt telling Zola the order has been given, and ends with a drive down memory lane of beatings. Joining us on the show, sadly for the last time this season, it's Dr. Arnold T. Blumberg. Hello.
Hi. I'm sorry to be wrapping up the week, but it's been a pleasure.
Well, I mean, you could crash anytime, man.
Okay.
Anytime you want.
Well, I'll be back next time.
It's
then.
Fine. It's fine.
Excellent.
Then I will be here next time. Then
Masterpiece.
The order has been given. Yes, we come in. This is the answer after in our last minute, we had Zola ask if he should give the order and find out that it has been given. There already is a plan in place per Schmidt to track down Erskine. And I have to think that, maybe that'll come into play sometime in the future. What do you think?
See, that also adds that whole thing we were talking last time, which is that like maybe there was a bit of Zola thinking he actually was a part of this process, but clearly he's not. So again, he's not included in this kind of decision making, and he kind of sloughs it off. But clearly, he thought, that he was going to be the one.
Yeah, I think he plays it off well when he says "good."
Yeah,
exactly. But yeah, you look at Toby Jones' face. He's like, he's a little hurt.
Mm-hmm.
A little hurt. His ego got bruised a little bit just now.
Oh, Toby.
I will have to become a supercomputer.
Everything about his brief sequence that we get in this minute is really perfect, because first he is obviously bruised, but when he comes back and the light turns on, the way he holds his body, the way you have the light cascading over his face, but not in his eyes and under his nose, the dark shadows there, sort of allude to the change that we might be able to see in some potential future Zola. The way he sort of loses definition in contrast, and I think that's I think it's really cool.
That's brilliant. I never thought of that. That's a beautiful observation. Yeah.
Well, it's a lovely image, right? I mean, it's just a lovely way to showcase him physically.
No, it works really well, and it plays well with the what's going on in the scene too, with this tension between these two characters and the dramatic music. This is the great moment that you have of that second opera piece, where you can hear the way that those beats are hitting, like those horns are hitting, emphasizing all of the stuff going on with this moment. It works really well as you get this moment where Schmidt turns the lights back on, and I can't help but wonder if this is a little bit more of like a test after this whole thing, where he turns the lights back on for Zola and says, "What do you think?" Just like he's wanting to see what Zola's going to say at this point. How did you two read this scene, this part of the moment here?
Well, I love the you talked about him in the last minute, and I've already forgotten his name.
The painter, the portrait artist?
David McHale?
Yeah, McHale. Yeah, it's amazing to not even get a line, and his face is everything in this one scene. Another great example of no small parts and how important it is. It's like that look of relief tells us everything, that his life is in danger. And like, you can spin it out. Like, I'm sure Schmidt has his family somewhere. And it's like, there's all sorts of horror and fear there. And it's like, it all rests on Zola to let this man live. And he does. And the relief is extraordinary. And it's so beautifully done with not a word spoken.
That everyman face on David McHale, I have seen really nothing intentionally of his, and yet he's been in so much, and his face looks so familiar to me. It's uncanny. I feel like, who am I looking at? Like, he is somebody I've seen before.
Well, he seems like the sort of person who would be the fourth geographer in a movie,
or fifth, fourth or fifth.
Yeah,
whatever.
But like, he does have a great face, but he works well, and he plays it so well. To what you were saying, Arnold, like, there's no dialogue. He just has to give a look. And the way that he reacts to Toby Jones' comment, and the way Toby Jones actually makes the decision to kind of just say that, I don't know, all of it plays really well in the scope of the end of this kind of tense interaction between the characters. I really enjoy the way that this, as much as I struggle with the way that it starts, trying to figure out like what is going on between these guys. Is he never seen him with his his human face off? Why are they acting this way? But the way that it builds to this final moment, I think, is quite good.
Mm-hmm. Well, and what is he asking him to react to specifically? Is he asking him to act to the to react to the quality of the artisanship of the painting, or is he turning on the light so that he can reveal himself more fully in bright light against the window? Like, is he that is always the sort of double intention of this scene that I think is really interesting. And I don't know, is he saying masterpiece to the painting or to Red Skull in his full glory?
That's also a beautiful point, and it works well both ways. And again, it underscores the power play between the two of them. And it goes back to what we were already talking about from before, about like, well, surely he's seen him. It's like, well, maybe he has, but also maybe he keeps himself under wraps, and maybe he likes to only be seen on his own terms. So it's like he walked in and it's like, do you mind? I'm having a portrait of thing. But then once he's got control of the situation, he can turn the light on and go, now I let you see, because it's my choice to let you see. And that makes a lot of sense.
I would love to have seen this painting just like at some point in somewhere else in the MCU. Like somebody had it. They got it from this base and they had it hanging up. That would have been a great little moment to have.
That would be awesome.
Yeah, why isn't it? Or like maybe like in Vormir or wherever, where the skull is now just a ghost, like just tacked on somewhere. He still has the portrait hanging up.
He brought it with him. Oh, that would have been great. That would have been great. It's a great little moment. I enjoy this, but yeah, I would love to see the painting at some point. It would be fun to see. I don't know if we have anything else. Any last things here in the Alps before we take off?
I don't think so.
Let's go back to New York.
So we are leaving the Alps and we're ending up in Brooklyn. Back in Brooklyn, we get a great little moment here. Just kind of setting the stage for where we are. I mean, if there's anything that says America, it's young boys playing stickball in the streets, I suppose, huh?
Yeah.
Totally.
Like, cliches, but they work,
It's fun to see. It's frustrating. There are so many people in this movie who just don't have even like credited as background characters. There's just one person who's credited as a New York child, Esme Allen Cornby. I don't know if this is a person who's playing stickball. I don't know if it's another New York child that shows up somewhere else. Hard to say. Unfortunately, it's just left unclear.
Could it be the one who's threatened by the Hydra agent?
I believe that child is actually more specifically named or credited as like kid. And, I can't remember what he says, but I think that kid is
Nazi guy.
Yeah, something like that. There are also a couple kids credited like kid in USO audience and things like that. But the only one I could find in relation to kind of like New York is just the one that says New York or New York child. So
New York child. I would love to go out as New York child. Wonder how many people show up for that audition.
You're just not New York enough for this role.
Sir, you're 49 years old.
I love Captain America. I'm sorry.
In this movie. I brought my own mitt and everything, sir. That's the end of a long week, everybody.
That's right. We are coming in at a section of this film. We are filming a lot of this in and around the London area because they did film all of this over in the UK. And it looks like this street, we're on Dale Street, where they're actually filming this. And then, of course, they digitally added the Brooklyn Bridge in the back just to emphasize once more that this is, in fact, Brooklyn.
Wait a minute. This wasn't 40s Brooklyn for real? What kind of a movie is this?
The magic of movie making.
Those fakers. I would love to have thought that they could have shot some in New York, but obviously it didn't make sense with the whole thing taking place, or with the rest of the film being filmed over in the London area. So.
Mm-hmm.
We do see a car driving down the street here, along with a lot of street signs. Before we jump into the car, I just wanted to rattle through some of the street signs because it feels very generic, which is fine, and period. Hardware, paint, varnishes, and oils. We see something like Cohen and I'm guessing Sons, maybe Men in Boys Pants. There's a shipping trade. There's a photo studio. Right by the alley that Steve's going to point to, it says Gunsmith. So we see very generic signs. Does this feel like something that would be authentic to you both, or does this feel like a little too fakey?
Well, I mean, certainly wasn't watching it like freeze framing it. You know what I mean? Like it moves pretty fast. It definitely felt of the period to me. I didn't really question any of the drive. Not even a little bit, mostly because my heartstrings were so taut at the moment over what small Steve was saying.
See, that's the point, too. When they're setting up the shot, they're thinking, you sure that these signs are going to convince people that this is Brooklyn in the 40s? And you don't understand. They don't matter because everybody is going to be focusing on the incredible moving piece happening in the car. And they're going to be distracted from the signs. And that is Johnston's genius as a director. He understands that.
Yeah.
Well, and it's smart. Leaving them generic is smart, honestly, because you don't want it to be so specific. But yeah, it is funny. I know we're all just being a little cheeky here, but yeah, it is one of these things. You see these signs in the background. Really, the focus. Let's just get on with it. It's the car. We hop into the car, and of course, now we see it's Steve and Peggy and an uncredited driver. I'll just say that he is here. He's completely not a part of the scene, although you do get a great 3-shot of him sitting in the driver's seat as he's driving. It's really a conversation.
It's Peggy and baby Steve, who kind of looks like he's sitting in another car very far away, almost like the forced perspective shots from Fellowship of the Ring. Except he's not. This is one of the scenes that I was alluding to earlier and saying this is one of the ones where I feel like the CGI on him doesn't work too well. It's like they went so far with the shrinking of him that again, and how much have we already talked in just a few episodes about how it's a comic book movie, right? But there are certain things I feel where you can go with it and certain things where you can't. Certain things where the reality needs to work for the rest of it to be silly. I would like to think that I could look at him and feel like that's a real human being. But I feel that very often the stuff they did to him in this part of the movie was a little too much. And in only a couple moments does it really work. And the earlier minutes we've done this week, I think it works. In this, it's in daylight, and he really doesn't look like he's even sitting there, though he probably was, and they, did the stuff after, and the proportions are weird. It's just really weird. But whatever. So.
Is it because you get a little bit of that Gandalf Frodo in a buggy feeling?
Yes, exactly.
Is that kind of what you get?
I still think all the time about that behind the scenes thing where they said, look how he's not even sitting in the same place. And I'm thinking that's what Steve looks like, even though I know it's not.
It's like they don't. Yeah, it feels like they didn't tell him quite the right eye line.
Yeah,
exactly. They didn't quite. His eyes aren't quite pointed in the right place.
It's a tough one. It's a lot to think about two people sitting side by side and then doing all that. It's just So it doesn't. I don't feel it works 100%. But also, again, I don't care. I mean, it's not going to make me turn off the movie. I just don't think it's as convincing as it is in other spots.
I think it works better when Steve is in the foreground and the camera is like focusing on him and Peggy is kind of the one who's kind of a little farther from camera. Like that works better for me.
Yeah.
As opposed to when we do kind of the reverse angle and we're kind of over Peggy's shoulder looking back at Steve. And that's where I look at Steve and I'm like, is he smaller than he normally is?
Yeah.
Like it just always ends up feeling like, almost like, I don't know what ends up coming into my head, which is a completely, nonsensical thing to pick up. But it's The Secret Life of Walter Mitty when you have the baby. They do this whole spoof on Curious Case of Benjamin Button, and Kristen Wiig is like taking care of Ben Stiller, who is like this little baby man. And when I see Steve in this particular moment, I I always go to the baby man moment because he looks like not right. He looks like they're trying to do a baby man thing here.
Yeah.
But otherwise, it works. If it was just all from the other side, it would be okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's really true. In isolation, it's wizardry. Like in isolation, it's perfect, and it's the integration that suffers a little bit.
Yeah.
Well, but I think it's specifically the integration when he's in the distance from her. Like again, when he's foreground and she's background, the sizing weirdly looks fine, even though I'm guessing it's probably comparable. It just is when he's past her, he looks extra small. I really struggle. I'm just gonna
he goes full Frodo.
He's full baby man. No, he's
shrinking in her presence because she's so intimidating to him.
He's gone full baby man here. Which maybe makes sense. Maybe they said, you know what, let's make him the extra baby man here because he's going to be talking about how much he gets beat up all the time.
Please let there exist an interview where Joe Johnston uses the words full baby man. Do you guys buy the dialogue here? He says, I was beaten up. Look at all the places I was beaten up. I'm also objectively a small guy, and I tend to open my mouth in ways that kind of angers other people. And then she says, yeah, I know a little something about that.
Well, she first says, did you have something against running away?
Yeah.
Okay, well, yeah, I guess
what possibly does she have to relate to little Steve?
Well, okay, this Arnold, you're coming in on this conversation that Pete has been having, fiery conversation from the beginning about his position of Peggy as a member of kind of the team looking for the perfect recruit for this experiment, and Pete's position is that she is looking at him as the perfect recruit, not romantically. And I feel like that's going to fall away at some point. I think Pete's going to have to give up on this. But at this point, I think this is a great moment to come in because this is a big conversation that we are going to talk about today and then next week. What do you feel about like Peggy as far as the way that she is seeing Steve at this point?
Well, for one thing, I will say at the outset, I know a lot of people are emotionally invested in this relationship. And of course, the movie wants you to be emotionally invested in this relationship. I never feel there's any chemistry between the two of them at all. None. Just none.
Oh, yeah.
Now, were you on Team Thor and Jane with the last season? I can't remember if you liked that relationship.
I think we may have talked about that. No, because they also have zero chemistry. Actually,
I was going to say, I feel like you're the zero chemistry guy.
Yeah, they're like a vortex of no chemistry.
Black hole of chemistry. Other people's chemistry gets sucked in.
That's why they had to bring his own wife in to do the kiss scene. What was it in the end post credits on Dark World? Because it's like, there's nothing happening there. So let's just shoot her from behind with a wig on so that you'll care about another human being that you're going to kiss. But I don't see any chemistry between the two. I think Haley Atwell's great. I think she's been great in all the stuff that she's done, but I don't buy the romance. I just don't think those two actors sparked. So I don't feel it really. And obviously there's a turning point at some point where you're supposed to feel like, oh, she's starting to realize this is a man. Actually, there's also some problems here. I mean, and to a certain extent, not one of us are really qualified to speak about it. So I feel uncomfortable.
Well, we'll try.
Level. But we'll try anyway, right? Because we're white guys, so we're going to do that. But obviously her character is meant to represent, an empowered woman at a time where while that didn't necessarily happen all the time, she definitely has the rank and position she has. But clearly that's her point, is I know a little something about this, is she knows what it's like to be a woman in a man's world trying to be a commanding figure. They play that beat a few times in the movie. But it's also something to be trying to make that kind of character in a movie directed by a man, a lot of men behind the scenes. You're not really getting an honest look at that kind of thing. And of course, we're doing better now, arguably, with some later stuff than we were then. But I also think that it's a bit uncomfortable that the first time you really get a sense that they're veering into the romance is when he comes out of the machine and he's all muscled.
Yeah.
And she looks at him, and I'm thinking that is a really regressive, old school kind of thing. Like, well, now I'm attracted to him because he's a big boy now. And it's like, I don't know that a woman would write that or that or direct it or that that's the way it would be. And I just think ultimately the relationship does what it needs to do for the movie, but I don't really believe in it. I don't think that it's, very convincing. And again, it doesn't matter that much for the adventure part of the story, but I just don't think those two really work.
Do you ever think those two work? I mean, they have kind of a history now.
No. I mean,
Never.
I feel like even at the end when he's gone, like the way it all wound up, I don't like that whole ending.
The dance.
Yeah, I mean, like it's just, I mean, and again, to go out of our time frame here, but I mean, for me, you'll never be able to convince me that a man like him could have sat through all that history again, knowing what he knows, that Hydra's running everything, and not do something about it. It's insane.
Yeah.
And I just don't buy that whole thing. So right from the start of it, these are two characters that don't seem to me to be a romantic couple. And I think they do the best they can as actors with the story they're supposed to be telling. But yeah, that's the weakest part of it for me, I guess.
Is that a Marvel problem? Do you find any couples work well in Marvel, or do you feel like is there a Joe Johnston element there? I mean, he hasn't had a lot of romance in his films, or is it just kind of an intrinsic, thing that just keeps happening because of the kind of the way that these stories get constructed?
That's an interesting point. I'm trying to think of
because at this point, I mean, we've had Pepper, and we've had Betty, and
I always felt that Tony and Pepper seemed to actually be a couple that were like, those two seemed to really be sparking off one another. When Natalie watched it with me, she pointed out that the problem with that one is it's hugely toxic because he's her boss, and even though he hands the company to her, that's a really really uncomfortable relationship, especially that first time when he likes going to dance with her and everything. But I mean, as actors in chemistry, I think the two of them seem like, I believe it, that the two of them are together. I'm trying to think of anyone else. I don't know what other couples have we had.
Yeah, I mean, well, it'll be a while before we get new couples. What's the next new couple? Is Ant-Man? Is that right?
I was just going to say Ant-Man. Yeah.
Ant-Man. I don't buy that one either.
You're not into. Okay.
I never thought of this before. Maybe they have a couples problem. I don't know.
They have a couples problem. Well, in this scene in particular, I struggle with the fact that they're trying to relate, where she's saying that I know a little something about that. And obviously we don't, in this context, have the benefit of the rest of the conversation, but I know a little something about that. And then what that is somehow relates her experience as being a woman in the military to being a small man who gets beaten up in alleys. And I just don't necessarily buy that connection. It ultimately ends up infantilizing him a little bit and doesn't necessarily make her case any stronger or more empowered.
No, and arguably it really minimizes her experience completely too. But you're comparing a guy who's gotten beaten up in an alley to a woman who's experienced systemic discrimination.
Yeah,
yes. 100%.
Yeah, it doesn't. It does. But the thing is, though, we can say that, and yet I don't disbelieve, like, you have two people that have this kind of conversation. Maybe she's trying to reach out to him. Maybe she's trying to say, well, I understand, we have problems. And, it doesn't have to be exact one-to-one. She's trying to connect with him a little bit. And also it's also victim to these standard romance couple kind of cliches in movies. She's being kind of cold. She doesn't really want to connect with him emotionally because he's the test subject. But she's still trying to be
not nice. Until he has giant pecs.
Until now he's the muscle guy. And it's like, whoa.
Yeah. Well, everything, I hear what you're doing there. You're backpedaling a little bit, and that doesn't work in service of my position that they are not romantic at this point in the face, just smashing it in Andy's face, because he's definitely on team couple.
I'm not on team couple. I like to provoke you because I think it's funny that you took that stance so hard out of the gate that it's just all about the science.
Now it's all yeah.
And you're going to be that
They
guy.
could be making out in the back of that car, and I would still say There's nothing of substance there.
10 years down the road, they have children and a house, and you say, "Don't buy it, don't buy it."
She's just on the edge of leaving him at any moment. Is all I'm saying.
Give it 6 months.
You can't marry don't marry your heroes. Isn't that something they say?
To your point, though, like if he had come out of the test and he had been incredibly, incredibly strong, but was in the exact same body that he went in with, I wonder if she would have ever grown romantically interested in him.
Well, clearly not, because Peggy likes her beefcake is the whole idea.
Yeah, it's all about those pecs.
She needs a himbo.
Just gotta touch it.
That's what the movie's all about, ultimately.
Yep.
It is a weird way for him to kind of. I know we're not gonna find out about in this minute, but he does know how to talk to girls. Well, we kind of already got some of that with him and Bucky earlier. How he's like, I don't know what to do with these girls. I tried giving Bonnie peanuts, and she clearly didn't want any peanuts. I don't know what to do.
Well, we know the real reason why he's having that problem. If he and Bucky would just admit to themselves, this is the love affair that will last lifetimes. So.
That's right. This is the one that is as unrequited. Alas.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
but it is so strange though that like his lead into the conversation is like about how abused he was, like how he's just always getting beaten up, and it's like, is that something that you are gonna say? I don't know. It just feels like one of those things that's just like, maybe just can't keep that to yourself. It's just, I don't know. This whole conversation ends up starting in a way where I kind of struggle with it because of that, and I get her reaction is like, it does feel like kind of the scientist trying to probe a little bit, like, did you have something against running away, like trying to kind of get at it a little bit.
Here's the thing that I do like about it, though, is that everything you're saying right now is just yet another wonderful indication that this Steve does not even know that there would be possibly potential for a relationship. And he keeps saying, yeah, here's all the places I used to get beaten up. Like, he just can't fathom that there is somebody who's trying to invest in the relationship with him to the point that there's a curiosity of romance, and he can't see it. And I think it's just, I do like his portrayal of that. And it just, again, cements my point.
And it also is designed very much like everything we've had with Steve since we first met him at the recruitment center, to be something giving us a sense of who he is on the inside. Because he has these quippy lines, like, you start running, they'll never let you stop. You stand up, push back, can't say no forever, right? Like, that moment that he has here, this is yet another thing for him to say, this is who Captain America is. This is the guy that I am. All of these things that have happened from that first time to this, it's all kind of setting up this character. And with moments like this, I mean, it's here very specifically to give Peggy something to kind of, potentially fall in love with. It's not just about the science. It's like, oh, okay, yeah, you and me, we're so alike, and as she says, yeah, so.
Yeah, right.
It's interesting. I mean, it's an interesting scene. I like the car scene. It's not my favorite of the scenes in the film. But, I can see that clearly it needs to be here to, get these two characters closer and closer together for us as a potential item. Arnold, one of the things we like asking our guests over the course of the week is, what for you would be a favorite Captain America moment from the comics or from the films? Do you have something that stands out as kind of the pinnacle Captain America?
Well, I've been thinking about it, and I still haven't really quite zeroed in. I was trying to think more about the comics because I figured, well, I certainly have a lot more history with the comics, but I do feel that one of the things that defines these movies is something that I love so much, and obviously a lot of us do, that we always come back to, is how well the casting was done in so many cases. And I think that Chris Evans is one of those people who is like, once you see it, you can't imagine anyone else being this character. So ultimately, I feel like I really need to pick something of Chris Evans. And for me, I guess I'll go with more in general. I think his performance in the Avengers is one of the bits of glue that holds that whole thing together and makes it work so well, is that you have him really feeling like a man at a time, meeting all these other people and finding a way to unite everything. And even though it may be cliched and very obvious and overused, I think I'll pick as my moment from that, the I get that reference moment where they're sitting around the table, because it's human, it's heartwarming, it's childlike. Like he's like a little kid in this other time, and he hasn't quite figured out his place yet. And there's something very endearing about his character once he's moved into the present and is struggling with it. And I remember reading a lot of the comics from the 60s when they brought him back, in the Avengers first, and were playing a lot of these beats with a much different time scale, because obviously it was a lot more recently World War II had happened. But Stan and the others at Marvel would tend to play Cap's out of time as very melancholy. And what I like in the movies is, partly because they don't have time in the movies to deal with that, but I like the fact that they kind of moved past melancholy pretty quickly and just made it, this is a man who's determined to make sense of this time and be a part of it, but he's still not quite meshing. And that moment is a good one. Actually, if I pick a second, it would be like him writing the things down at the beginning of Winter Soldier with Sam. It's those little humanizing moments that tell you that in here is still that fallen baby man from the 40s. He's still trying to figure things out. So that's the parts I like, the very human parts of Chris Evans' performance.
Human and also sort of not human.
Not human at all, because he's a CGI baby.
He's a full baby man.
They went full baby. Well, I mean, despite the humor, those were actually really great moments. And I like that you focused on such human elements of the character, because I think that's something that I latch onto with him as a character, is that he does have that sense of trying to be the best version of himself that he can be. I really enjoy that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't think anybody's picked I Get That reference yet, which is so good. I didn't even think about it, but it's so easy to pick the huge moments of Cap, right? The I could do this all day, the on your left, the those kinds of giant hero moments that we get, and or catching catching Thor's hammer in at the end. It's just all of those things are so big, and I like this because it's a gem of a small moment that says so much, and that's one of the things that makes this character, I think, so appealing.
Thanks. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Well, Arnold, remind everyone one last time where they can learn more about you and what you're up to.
You can hear me and my wife, Natalie, talk about all kinds of horror movies, sci-fi, and beyond on our podcast, Ghouls in the House, which you can find at ghoulsinthehouse.com or on your favorite podcast app. And you can also check out my publishing company, where we publish books on all the pop culture universes that you love, at atbpublishing.com. And thanks for reminding me in a previous one, I'm also doing a comic strip twice a week called Pickles and Bean, which you can find at picklesandbean.com.
We'll check all those out. And everybody, you're going to have to now track down the Chupacabra at the Alamo episode. That
Eric Estrada is in that movie.
No.
Of course he is.
Goodness.
Of course
Eric Estrada is in it. It is you want to talk bad CGI. Oh, just you wait.
Is that what it's called, Chupacabra at the Alamo?
It is, in fact, a 2013 movie, Chupacabra versus the Alamo.
Wow.
Yes. Chupacabra versus the Alamo, and Eric Estrada. And the thing is, the more I think about it, the more I think I don't think we ever actually specifically talked about it on our show. But it was one of those early movies that the two of us watched together that really made us realize how much we both really enjoy watching the terrible things and having fun with it. And that was one of them.
Well, now you're going to have to do that episode.
I know. Yeah. Now, if we haven't done it yet, we're going to have to.
Oh my God, so funny.
That's too
so
good.
Funny. Somebody has to talk about that movie.
Please.
Might as well be you.
Might as well.
All right. I'll take the shot.
Yep. There you go. Arnold, thanks so much for joining us all week.
It has been a pleasure. I love doing these with you, and I'm always happy to do more. So thanks very much.
We appreciate it. We'll have you back for next season for sure. And that's it for the week, everybody. Remember, you can join our Discord community. Just go to marvelmovieminute.com and you can click on the Discord link and you can join it and jump into the conversation with all of us over there. And we'd love to have you. So, Pete, thanks again, as always.
What would happen if you put the super soldier serum in an evil chupacabra? Just going to leave you with that.
Would it turn red?
Shirt! I'm
put it on a shirt.
Until next time, true believers.
Marvel Movie Minute is a production of True Story FM. Engineering by Andy Nelson. This season's music is Spread the News by Anthony Vega, and this season's show art is by Winston Yabo. Find the show at truestory.fm, and if your podcast app allows ratings and reviews, consider doing that for this show.